You ever look at a team, one that's just crushing it, and you think, how on earth are they doing that? We usually just say it's luck, right? Or maybe some once-in-a-lifetime mix of people. But what if I told you that our whole idea of how teams perform is just wrong? That these star teams aren't a fluke at all, but the predictable outcome of a process we've just totally misunderstood? Well, let's get into it.
So here's the game plan. First, we're going to tear down the myth of the bell curve. Then, we'll look at the shocking reality a huge new study uncovered. After that, we'll figure out what actually makes a star team tick, and even explore if there's a formula for creating more of them. And finally, we'll talk about a whole new playbook for leading teams.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the bell curve myth. This is all about that picture of performance that's been hammered into our heads forever, in business school, in management seminars, pretty much everywhere.
Let me just ask you a simple question. How good is the average team? I bet you're picturing a line, right? With a big lump of teams in the middle, and then a few struggling ones on one side and a few amazing ones on the other. Well, that picture has a name.
It's called the normal distribution. You know it as the bell curve. The whole idea is that most teams are just kind of average. Star teams? Oh, they're super rare. Way out on the edge of the graph. This one single idea is the foundation for almost all modern management. But here's the kicker. What if it's just not true?
And that brings us to Section 2. We're going to ditch the assumptions and dive headfirst into the hard data. And trust me, what they found is a total game changer. Because the real world of how teams get work done, it isn't a neat, tidy bell curve. It's way more wild, it's more unequal, and honestly, it's a lot more interesting.
To figure this out, two researchers, Kyle Bradley and Herman Aguinis, launched a study that was just massive. We're talking data from over 200,000 teams. That's 500,000 people, in everything from pro sports and tech to political campaigns and customer service. This wasn't some tiny lab experiment. This was a deep dive into how teams actually perform out in the wild. So, after sifting through all of that data, what percentage of teams do you think fit that classic bell curve model? The answer is just 11%. That's it. For the other 89% of teams, the basic rule of modern management completely falls apart.
So reality doesn't look like a bell. It's what's called a heavy-tailed distribution. What does that mean? It means you have a big pile of teams that are underperforming, and then this long, stretched-out tail of hyper-performing teams. This is where the stars live. And guess what? There are way more of them than the bell curve ever let us believe. Performance isn't balanced. It is radically unequal.
And this isn't just random chaos. There's a very specific pattern here. Get this. 73% of these non-normal teams followed a shape called a power law. Now, don't worry about the technical jargon. All you need to know is that it means there's a predictable engine at work, one that consistently pumps out a lot of so-so teams and a surprisingly high number of star teams.
Okay, so that leads us right into Section 3, the engine of stardom. If the bell curve is a total myth, what's the real force that's shaping how teams perform? Why do some teams just pull away from everyone else?
I mean, this is the million-dollar question, right? If it's not random, there has to be some kind of process, some mechanism that's creating all these star teams. So what is it?
The researchers call this engine incremental differentiation. Basically, it's all about compounding advantages. It means small, early wins get leveraged into slightly bigger wins, and over time, that creates these hugely different results. The key takeaway here is that it's not about where a team starts, it's about the trajectory they get on. Think of it like a snowball rolling down a hill. It starts small. A team gets a tiny edge, maybe a slightly better workflow or a new skill. Then they use that little edge to get another small win. That might get them noticed, and they get a better project or more resources. Suddenly, the gap between them and other teams starts to widen. And that process just repeats and repeats. The advantages compound, the snowball gets bigger, and pretty soon that team is on a completely different path, a trajectory to stardom.
So this brings us to Section 4, and this is where it gets really practical. If being a star team is a process, not just a lucky break, can we actually engineer it?
I mean, if we know that incremental differentiation is the engine, can we tune that engine? Are there levers we can pull in our own organizations to create an environment where these star trajectories happen more often? Well, it turns out the answer is a resounding yes.
The study found two really crucial and kind of surprising levers. The first is authority differentiation, which is just a fancy way of saying how much is one person calling the shots. And the second is temporal stability. How often do people join or leave the team?
Let's just park on that second one for a minute. Stability, right? All the business books say stable teams are better.
You build trust, you know how each other works, you get better over time. Well, this research basically takes that idea and throws it right out the window. Okay, check this out, because it's completely counterintuitive. High stability, where no one ever leaves the team, it actually leads to more average, predictable results. It pushes teams toward the middle. But low stability, a little bit of turnover, it creates more variability. It shakes things up. New ideas come in, old habits get broken, and it creates more opportunities for a team to jump onto a new, higher-performing path. It doesn't mean every team with turnover becomes a star, but it hugely increases the odds that some of them will.
So, what's the formula then? Well, having a clear leader, high authority differentiation, that helps. But the single biggest lever you can pull is low temporal stability. A little bit of team churn. In fact, its impact was more than 4 times stronger than any other factor. A little instability, it turns out, might just be the secret ingredient. And you know what was wild? The mix of skills on the team didn't really matter at all.
Which brings us to our final section, leading for the outliers. If the old management playbook was based on a myth, what does the new one, the one based on evidence, actually look like?
Someone who reviewed this paper said it perfectly. For centuries, we acted like the world was flat. Discovering it was round changed everything about how we explore and trade. Well, this is the same thing. Realizing that team performance is heavy-tailed, not normal, should change everything about how we lead.
So here's the new playbook. Number 1, stop managing for the average team. It's basically a myth. Instead, focus on creating the conditions for that snowball effect to happen. Help teams turn small wins into bigger wins. Third, when you see a team on one of those high-performance trajectories, pour resources on them. That's your best investment. And finally, you have to rethink stability. A little bit of churn isn't a problem to be fixed. It might be one of your most powerful tools for building something great.
And really, that's what it all comes down to. The old bell curve model, that's a recipe for consistency, for making sure everyone clusters around the middle. But we now know that greatness isn't found in the middle. It's found way out in the tail. So the question to ask yourself is this: are you building for consistency, or are you building an environment for greatness?